Welcome to WhiskyCast, cask strength conversation featuring news and interviews from the world of whiskey. I'm Mark Gillespie, and this is episode number 953 for June 1st, 2022, featuring our happy hour live webcast from the other night. My guests were Greg Swartz, director of the film The Water of Life, and Ian Logan, senior director of whiskey for Duncan Taylor Company. Don't forget to join us this Friday. My guest will be newly promoted master distiller Freddie No of Jim Beam and the James B. Beam Distilling Company. He's been responsible for a lot of the Beam innovations over the last several years, including his Little Book whiskeys and the new Hardin's Creek wine. We start right at 5 p.m. New York time on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, Twitter, and Twitch. Thanks as always to Redbreast and Dewar's, our presenting brand partners of WhiskyCast, for making our weekly live shows possible. We'll have a special edition of the Happy Hour live webcast coming up 2 weeks from now on Thursday, July 16th from the Dewar's U.S. Open party in Boston. More details on that coming up soon. I also want to thank our segment sponsors on each week's flagship WhiskyCast podcast, Writer's Tears, Sagamore Spirit, Mortlock, Catoctin Creek, Scarabus, and the Dalmore. Hope you've had a good 2 weeks since our last webcast. Thanks for understanding that I couldn't make it last weekend because I was on an airplane and the Wi-Fi signal just isn't that good on flights yet. But we are back this week. A couple of great guests I'll bring in just a minute here. Ian Logan from Duncan Taylor Company. And we'll also bring in Greg Swartz, the director of the film The Water of Life, which will have its premiere on PBS stations coming up in the very next few days, as a matter of fact. And just a little bit later on in the show, I'll also have a preview of my interview with Brad Paisley, the country music superstar, that you'll hear on this weekend's podcast episode of WhiskyCast. So let's bring in Greg Swartz, first of all, because we're only going to have Greg for about 10 or 15 minutes because he's on Isla right now. And, well, you never quite know when the wind is going to take out power lines and internet connections and all that. Greg, how are you doing tonight?
I'm very, very well, thanks. It's great to be here, Mark, in Isla and with you, both.
Give us a first-day summary of what's going on in Isla during the Phage, since we know Lagavulin starts things tomorrow with festival days, but events actually started today, didn't they?
They did, I didn't realize, actually, until I got a notification that they did. And we went down to Port Ellen, and there was more community-oriented stuff than the kids in bounce houses and bands. Not so much whiskey events tonight, but then, yeah, Lagavulin's tomorrow morning. But I've already been having my own festival.
Where all have you been so far since you got there a few days ago?
Ardbeg, Lagavulin, Kilchoman, and Bruichladdich so far.
And the rest yet to come, right?
Yeah. We'll get them.
How are the crowds looking on the island?
Well, it started getting really crowded today. Yesterday was still pretty quiet, but it started getting really crowded today. And the restaurants, I was just in Port Ellen, like I said, and like the restaurants were sort of bursting. And but yeah, maybe not super manic yet, but I know that they will be.
Give it time. It's good to finally be able to get back to the island after a couple of years away, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 2.5 years for me. Most people too, I'm sure.
So let's talk about the premiere of The Water of Life on PBS in the United States. This is sort of a deal that you'd been working on for a while, right?
Yeah, we have, and we're very excited about it because PBS, is to us the kind of gold standard for documentaries in America, and we were going to be sort of relatively limited in where we were going to be, and then they sort of PBS really took to the film, I think, and sort of gave us a bigger platform within the network, and so we're going to be all over the country starting in June.
What's in your glass, by the way? I forgot to ask earlier.
I am drinking a Bruichladdich Valanche that actually just sold out apparently the other day. Hold on, there we go. The Rob McAkern.
Oh, nice. I have a Bruichladdich Rare Cask Series, 1988, a 30-year-old sample that they sent me a while back that I am just about to taste for the first time. And oh, nice. Question for you from Dave Kuhn. Who ended up underwriting the show on on PBS?
Well, it's different in each market around the country. Because, people think of PBS as a network, but it's really just like 300 plus member stations. And so there's different ones across the country. And then what we're going to do likely is actually we're going to have this PBS event, and then we're going to do a second PBS in the months to come, which the details are still being worked out on that. So I don't really have any specifics yet, but for right now, every market has different dates and different times that they've chosen. People will be able to get those specifics on their local PBS site or on our website as well. But, because they're different everywhere. They start in June. We're pushing for Father's Day, but I know we have some as late as the last day of June, and we have some as early as I think June 6th is the earliest one.
And the cool thing is this will include streaming on the PBS app for the next year, I believe, right?
Yeah, yep, pbs.org. Right before we went live, part of our team sent me a link that I can share. I sent it to you in the chat, Mark. It's pbs.org/show/water-life. And that will take everyone to their local PBS station and show them where it'll be there. If you want to share it, you can.
Let's just sort of see if we can get that up on the screen real quickly here. And we can show that right now, pbs.org/show/water-life. Is the place where you can go to find it. And for those who have not yet seen it, tell us what the story's about.
Well, it's really the story of the whiskey revolution of the last 20 years, specifically focusing on Scotch and Scotland. We always say the craftsmen, chemists, and renegades who reinvigorated Scotch whiskey and started a revolution around the world.
Question for you from Chris Ratcliffe. What are the distribution options and challenges for independent producers like you? And what about Netflix and Amazon for small films? Obviously, you're starting with PBS, but you're hoping to hit some other services too, right?
We will, actually, for sure. What we've done is we've sort of, done a lot of these private whiskey club or events all around the world. I was in Germany last week. We had a Taiwan event last night. We had a Canadian premiere in December. Going back to Canada, we're doing Norway. I mean, we've done loads of different countries. And now we're doing PBS. And PBS once a month of exclusivity, which we're giving them. And then after that, we will work with a distributor who's going to take us on to streamers, probably multiple streamers. And that should be we've been told like late August. It takes about 6 to 8 weeks once we give it to them, which will be right after the 4th of July. So.
And a question for you from Graham Fraser. How is your follow-up film going? That one's on independent bottlers.
Yeah, it's going really well, actually. We're nearly done shooting. We kind of had to stop shooting during the pandemic because I was thousands of miles away from most of the people I wanted to talk to. I have a partner on that he worked on the first film as well, and he's based in Scotland, and he and I have been tag teaming stuff as best we can. Guy Satchwell, we're down to the last few interviews that we need, and we're hoping to have that done in the next few months. It still needs a lot of work, but it would be done if it hadn't been for the pandemic. So we're hoping, probably by the end of the year.
And one of the folks that you wanted to talk to is joining us right now, Ian Logan from Duncan Taylor Company. Ian, how are you tonight?
I'm good, Mark. I'm really good.
And what's in your glass?
Surprisingly, a wee Blackpool 12-year-old. Probably the one of choice on most of the team at Duncan Taylor.
And that's not available. Well, it is available in the States, but a lot of folks have not really heard about that one. Tell us about the blend, and because that sort of is what drives the bus, really, for Duncan Taylor, right?
Historically, it's a very old blend, and it dates back to being created in 1864 in Dundee by a gentleman called George Wilshire. But the outstanding fact, as far as we're always concerned with Blackpool, is simply it's a minimum of 50% malt content, 50% grain content, and bottled at 50% alcohol, 100 proof. So that simple fact itself just makes it a much more characterful, much more in-depth, robust blend compared to many of the ones that we see out in the market today. And we start with an on-age statement one with Kylo, maybe the young upstart of the family, going all the way through to a legendary 40-year-old. A brilliant range of whiskies.
And you just introduced a couple of 50-year-old single malts last week. Tell us about them.
Yeah, it was a tough week. A 50-year-old Capadonna and a 51-year-old Conclave. One of the great things that attracted me to Duncan Taylor was the opportunity to be working with whiskies like this, and especially silent distilleries. Conclave had such a short life period, only from 1957 to 1975. It's probably one of the most hardest to find lowland distilleries, and we're incredibly fortunate in that we've still got stock at Duncan Taylor. Capadonna is probably one of the best kept secrets in Speyside. The people in the know all about it. But to find, again, casks that date all the way back to the 60s, and that's an inheritance we picked up from the previous owner of Duncan Taylor, Abe Rosenberg, a man who had an incredible collection of single cask whiskies, and when Ewan bought the business in 2001. So it doesn't come along every day, but silent distilleries, yes, the age is great, but you think about the history and what's happened in over those years, and how the industry's developed, how you develop as a person. Just had so many different dimensions to the liquid as well.
We've seen not only these two, but a bunch of whiskeys in that 50 to, up to 80-year-old range coming out recently. What do you think is driving all this? And I'll ask the question to both of you. What do you think is driving this demand or this availability of ultra-aged single malts?
Greg, if you want, feel free to dive in.
Well, I'm excited that it's happening. I don't have my finger on the pulse the way you do, for sure. But to me, I feel like there's never been more non-age statement whiskeys, and there's never been more of these super aged whiskeys. And it's sort of like there's this divide in the middle. But what market forces are driving that? I'm not 100% sure. But hopefully you can tell me. I'd love to know.
There's still this incredible passion out there for Scotch whisky. No, it's still the most aspirational drink in the world. And the consumer now, from my perspective, is probably more knowledgeable than they've ever been. They're demanding a little bit more. They want to understand a little bit more. They want to have something that their neighbour doesn't have. A whiskey fan, a whiskey connoisseur loves to say to their friends, I've tried something you haven't, or no, I know something you don't. And when whiskies like this come along, it's what hopefully people strive to be able to try. It's a memory. It's a link to a different time for a lot of people as well. So yes, you're bringing in the newer ones with the non-age statement that you mentioned, Greg. But equally, there's those established drinkers that are growing with the category, growing with the knowledge as well.
Greg,
something someone said. That? Well, yeah, someone recently said something to me that I thought was very interesting, which was the idea that a lot of the non-age statement whiskeys are whiskeys that for the first time ever have been conceived as single malts from the very beginning. That they didn't hopefully had a better wood program in place because that's what they were designed to be right from their conception, as opposed to someone going through a warehouse and saying, okay, this could be a good single malt, this could do this could do this. And I found that interesting on the other end of that. But you're completely right, Ian, because I was, when we were shooting our film, I was lucky enough at Gordon and MacPhail to drink 75-year-old Mortlock. And I always managed to get that into every conversation, including now this one, because it was awesome.
That was a good one. Dave Kuhn has an interesting point. I think we're hitting a bubble peak in the trend of whiskey, and he'd say the bourbon boom probably had a hand in the expansion of Scotch and whiskey enthusiasm in general. Would you agree with that, guys?
They've grown hand in hand. The prices are probably not relative, but certainly that demand for the rarity, the obscurity, to try that unique expression from whatever distillery it may be, yes, it exists just the same with bourbon as it does with Scotch whisky.
Greg, your thoughts? Well, you see this as a consumer as well as a filmmaker.
For sure, yeah. And I have yet to ever sleep in a line. I'll tell you that. I saw that going on in Campbellton this whole week, and I'm sure just down the road from me right now, there's people probably camping out at Lagavulin right now. But it's something I've never done, and I know people do it with bourbon as well. So I'm happy to wait and find the stuff that speaks to me in different ways, But I definitely think that the two have kind of gone hand in hand, and they sort of feed on each other. And I'm anxious to see what that does with things like Australian whiskey, for example. I haven't seen a bubble with that yet. I kind of think it's happening a little with Irish whiskey right now. I feel, but I don't know. I don't have any data to back that up. Just the amount of buzz I see about different brands and expressions and stuff.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit there with Irish whiskey as well. Certainly driven by Middleton. Certainly started it off. And then you look at the obsession with things like Dargailloch and having to have all the different oak expressions. But it always comes back to that little word of 6 letters of Scotch. That fortunately gives us that head advantage over many of our friends around the world.
Well, Greg, I know you have to go. So you have a meeting to get ready for your next premiere for the premiere of the Water of Life film on PBS. So we will let you go, and thank you for joining us from Isla. And please give everyone in the island our best when you see all 100,000 of them tomorrow.
I will. That's actually why I have to go, is because I have talked with our team who's in the U.S. about some stuff we're doing this week to promote the film here on Isla. So that's even though it's late here, it's not late there, but. Thank you so much for having me. It's always fun to talk to you, Mark, and it's great to meet you, Ian.
Take care, Greg.
Okay, Greg,
Thanks,
we'll talk to you later on. Thanks. Once again, that's Greg Swartz, director of The Water of Life. You can see it on PBS stations in the U.S. during June. Check your local listings for the time and the channel and the date, or you can also visit the wateroflifefilm.com site, and they'll have all the details for you as well. Ian, we had a question for you from our pal Greg Serafian in Paris. He wants to know how your incredible journey made you move to Duncan Taylor, because we've known you for working with Chivas Brothers for years and years and years. What made you make the move last year?
My time at Chivas was fabulous. I don't regret 1 minute of it, but the attraction of being involved in a small company, to see the fact that everything you do has an influence on the end product, the sheer range of whiskies that's there to work with. I've known Ewan Shand, the owner of the business, for over 20 years. I know the passion, the drive that he has for what he does. And it was too good an opportunity to turn down. And it's only a few miles away from home. It was a great opportunity for the old dog to learn a few new tricks.
Yeah, you're in the hospitality business now.
Yeah, yes, as well, yes.
Tell us about the restaurant in Huntley.
We opened the restaurant about 12 weeks ago. It's called The Bank. So it's right in the square. And it's been a great journey. I was there when we got the keys and we went in on virtually the first day and looked around. And I was there on the opening night. Everybody contributed, not just the team that was on the ground. Ewan and Mosey had a massive input into it. They did the decor of the building. Now that's reflected in a really strong team. We've got a great chef, we've got a great core there, and we're offering a style of food that's a little bit different to what's the usual for the community. There's a little bit more of a hint, perhaps, to an American menu with a brunch menu going through into mid-afternoon, things like that as well. And then obviously the more classic steaks and things like that in the evening. So, we're open to different things. We listen to the public. We're very keen to get feedback. And being a small menu, we're flexible. We can adapt. Our local meat supplier is 200 yards away from the front door of the bank. We can trace that all the way back to his own herd, the animals we're using. So, we're very keen on local sustainability as well. The northeast of Scotland, we're incredibly lucky. We've got some of the best quality seafood and meat in the world. And I've got a chef who can show it off to the greatest degree. It's been a buzz for me. It's been a lot of hours. But it's just fun walking around, talking to people, listening to their experience, taking on board their thoughts as well. But as I say, the old dog is certainly learning a few new tricks.
What was the hardest part about making that switch, though, for you?
It doesn't matter when you move into any job. There's always a little bit of nervousness to it. And when you're in a big company, you almost have a security blanket behind you. There's a lot of things I've learned, new skills I've learned, things that maybe I haven't learned as quickly as I should have, or adapted to quite as quickly as I should have. But that's part and parcel of making a move. No, I'm bringing hopefully a huge amount of contacts and experience to the industry. But equally, there's other people who bring in other strengths in there, and the packaging development and the production side of things. So it's a small team, but it's an incredibly knowledgeable, incredibly experienced team as well.
Do you miss the Chivas Brothers expense account and corporate jet and all those perks?
I don't know what Chivas corporate jet you were on, but it's certainly one I was never on, that's for sure.
I couldn't resist.
No,
go ahead.
Go ahead. It's a different lifestyle. There's no doubt about it. But I'm more comfortable. I can get home at night. No, I'm getting a little bit older, so I enjoy my home comforts as well. I'm not travelling as much, which is a bonus for me. I hate to think how many hours I've spent in aircraft around the world. You know, time to appreciate one or two different things.
And Greg says as long as he can get some haggis and good whiskeys to go with, he's in for the restaurant, Ian.
That's fine, not a problem.
You do have haggis on the menu.
You know where to find me, Greg. Everything's possible.
And as he points out, a few whiskeys, I guess. Give us a sense of the extent of the whiskey collection you've got at the bank.
It's all 95% is obviously Duncan Taylor. The Back Bull range plays a big part for us. We run a very strong cocktail menu. We try to make it adaptable, but also reasonably comfortable and easy for the team to make. One of the things that I'm very proud of the team, for 12 weeks ago, only one person had hospitality experience. And to see the way that the rest of them have grown into the business and have adapted and working their ass off in so many occasions. But we have our premium octaves, we have our octave range, we have our rare old grain there. We have a detailed whiskey menu. There's something there for everyone. And even the blends such as Politician, smoking, big smoke and things like that as well. So yeah, we're really keen to promote as much as we can. Strong cocktail culture, but equally we want to educate people on the whiskies as well. And we'll take them through tastings and we'll take them through whatever they need to do to make them more comfortable with their visits to the bank.
Question for you from Ian Bruce. Do you think that maybe there could be a shake-up with the Scotch whisky regions, for instance, giving Aberdeenshire its own recognition instead of under the Highlands region, sort of like Speyside does?
I think at the moment, I don't know how many distilleries are actually technically in Aberdeenshire nowadays. Perhaps Glendronach, Fettercairn,
Knockdhu.
There's maybe only 4 or 5. It's an underrepresented region. There's a lot of history there when you go back and you read Barnard of all the distilleries that were up through that part of the world. It's the most fertile growing barley area in Scotland. So hopefully something would be developed over time. Whether the SWA adapt it, that's a whole different question that I'm not getting involved in.
And as Ed Friday jokes, Banffshire could be a region. Yes, theoretically it could. But I know Mike at the whiskey shop in Dufton has been yelling for years about wanting to make Dufton its own region too. Well,
exactly. How far do you want to go with this? And everyone will interpret it in a different way. We've got 5 at the moment that fit the structure just now, but it doesn't mean it can't change over time.
How's the cask supply been for you guys as independent bottlers? Are you still having an easy time getting your hands on older casks, or are you going through the collection that Abe Rosenberg had, pretty much?
Oh, no, we're still bringing new casks into the stock and into the inventory all the time. No, Ewan spends a massive amount of time, even though he's based in the US, speaking to distilleries, speaking to brokers back here in the UK. So we're always interested in new fillings as much as we're interested in older whiskies as well.
I'm cracking up laughing because I remember Ewan said he was retiring several years ago. and it seems like the boy's working harder than ever since he supposedly retired.
I think he said that a few years before that as well.
Yeah.
It's a passion in people. You know that, Mark. You know, you know, and that'll never die. No. I'm 35 years since I sold my first case of whiskey now, and I'm just a boy compared to people like Dennis Malcolm, to Ewan, and people like that. And these are the guys that I look up to. No, that's where you want to be. That's the way the industry hopefully should be as well. People who understand what drives people and makes it. The industry is about people, first and foremost. You can have the best ingredients, the best technology in the world, but if you don't have people with the passion and the belief in what they're doing, you'll never have the finished product.
And as Greg points out, like Alan Winchester, who retired finally this month as master distiller at the Glenlivet after being somewhat retired for several years. That's another running joke, too, pretty much.
He's retired from Glenlivet, but he's involved in the Cabrach distillery project as well. And that suits Alan. You know, he spends hours trampsing across the hills of Banffshire looking for illicit still sites and things like that as well. But Alan was a mentor for me for 25 years. And to be able to call him a close friend as well is a privilege.
What's your best Alan Winchester road story that you can tell?
I'm not good now.
I said that you can tell.
No, I'm not.
That bad, huh?
It's just the dry sense of humour. The typical Highlander, winding people up. I remember when we launched the 1966 50-year-old Winchester collection, we were in New York. I think you were there that night. And before it started, him and I sat there just looking around the room. And the PR girl came up and said, "Is everything okay, Chet?" Yeah. He just sat there deadpan and said to her, "Yeah, the only trouble is, see all that point of sale material? Yeah. The Scots don't spell whiskey with an E." And you ought to have seen this girl. She nearly died in her feet. And I see Alan, I can still see him sitting there on that couch with his shoulders going up and down, just chuckling away and got you. Simple things, but it was such a laugh. You had to be there, but it was such a laugh at the time.
Oh, I can imagine the poor PR person just going, "Oh, sweet Jesus."
I think Amber left the company shortly after that. She said, "I'm not putting up with those two again."
What do you think drives the passion for whiskey?
Very good question. I think there's a pride in it. It's part of the area. It's part of the landscape. It's part of the history. No, it's part of a greater picture. It's one part of a jigsaw. No, the fact that those illicit distillers hid away, to make their whiskey, but they were doing that because they were farmers. It was excess barley that was perhaps left over from a harvest time, but they could only do that because of the location. The water that was there, the ingredients that were there. The fact that they wanted to do it, they didn't let the fact that the gaugers were there. They saw it almost like the right to take a stag from the hill or a salmon from the river. No, I'm not saying that we do that nowadays. We certainly don't. But it's that drives it. And for producers like Ewan or Alan or whoever it may be, to walk into a bar anywhere in the world and look at the bar and go, "I made that. I bottled that. That's my whiskey." It's an incredible buzz for them to do as well. So that just again reflects the passion and the pride of the people.
Do you miss getting to muck around with that small still at Glenlivet?
I bumped my fingers too often in that thing. I'm glad to see the back of it. No, it was great fun to play with. And again, that was it. Taking it back, letting people understand. I remember when Jim Cryle taught me how to use it. And it's it gives you a perspective that you don't get nowadays. I'm trying not to sound like an old fart here, but the industry is losing a lot of characters. And that was a link back to the old days. We could talk about it. You could taste the spirit as it was coming through. You could taste the changes in it as well. And it just increased your knowledge levels of what was going on. Yeah, the small still was great fun to do. But my only disappointment there is we never bottled the whiskey, or at least when I was there, they never bottled the whiskey.
How was it coming off that still?
It was definitely Glenlivet. It was fruity, it was rich, it was oilier coming off the small still. It was definitely Glenlivet. There was no two ways about it.
So if you didn't bottle it, what did they do with it besides just put it into flasks?
I have no idea. Maybe I should suggest to you and we see if we can buy it and do something with it.
That'll go over well.
No, it's one of the things that hopefully that I would love to do is recreate something like that. For Duncan Taylor, and to educate people, to be able to help them share the knowledge, the stories that the people of Speyside have. And if we could get something like that, it's an incredibly powerful tool to have.
And Ian Bruce is asking, does too much dependence on automation now remove that skills and experience that we're losing with all these guys retiring?
Certainly most companies nowadays will have a training distillery where you'll go to for the first X length of time that you're with a company before you're sent out. Computers go wrong, Ian, and you still have to know where the levers and the switches are to be able to make everything work at the end of the day. So, no, the craft is still there.
But the characters are disappearing.
Yeah, sadly. But that's happening not just in the whiskey industry, that's happening in many different industries.
Yeah, you mentioned Jim Cryle, who was Alan's predecessor as master distiller.
Yeah.
Put him in perspective for those of us who came to whiskey late and never really got to meet Jim.
Jim was a remarkable little man. Chemist, qualified chemist, master distiller. He was the only master distiller I ever knew who was also a brand manager, a marketing manager. When he worked for Highland Distillers before he came to Chivas. At that time, he opened the Saladin Maltings at Tamdhu. He was at Bunnahabhain. He was at one or two other places, but he was also brand manager for Highland Park as well. And wearing another hat. So he still stays 15, 20 minutes walk from where I live in Elgin. I very rarely see him nowadays, but no, Jim's still around.
He teaches the Spirit of Speyside Whiskey School during the festival, from what I understand, or at least he did for many years.
He did for many years, yeah. He stepped back from that now, yeah.
Question for you from Graham Fraser. He wants to know your view of the whiskey that's coming out of all these new small craft distilleries at 3 to 4 years old. What do you think of this stuff?
If it's good, bottle it. Get on with it. Simple as that. Be honest with ourselves. Why do you buy your favourite whiskey? Do you buy it because it comes in a fancy bottle or fancy writing in the label, or do you buy it because you like the taste? You buy it because you like the taste. And if it's good at 3, 4 years old, you look at with Duncan Taylor Scotch Whisky. We released the first independent bottles of Dalmarnock at 4 years old. It's great whiskey. Lovely, fresh, vibrant, typical Speyside, lots of zesty fruit in it. But it was 4 years old. People loved it. So if the whiskey's good, use it. I'm an absolute advocate of that.
Are you laying down new make from some of these distilleries?
As I said to you earlier, we're always on the lookout. It just depends what becomes available, what packages come up, what we'll look at, if we believe it fits into the future plans of the business.
We have a question from Tyrone Cote. Can one drink too much penicillin? Asking for a friend. Yes, Tyrone, you can drink too many penicillins, especially at this time of night. And Ed Friday says your Dalminock is, he puts it, frickin' amazing.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you very much. But again, that testament to how good a young whiskey could be. Tyrone, I was looking at some of the comments coming through earlier, and I don't believe that's your first penicillin of the night.
No. But Tyrone has a legitimate question. Are the larger distilleries becoming more protective over their whiskeys to making it harder for independents to get casks?
It's not a side of the business that I'm actively involved in, is the honest truth. So I don't know exactly what's going on with that. I'd be lying to you if I was to say something on that one. But no, as I said, we're always on the lookout for it. Certain companies are perhaps more open to trading than others, but beyond that, I couldn't put my finger on it.
What was it like during this year's Speyside Festival when you finally had people back on the in the area for the first time?
Brilliant.
Because I know you live there, so what was it like to have people back for the first time in a couple of years?
It was great. No, it brought the buzz. It brought everything. It brought the place alive again. When you drive down through the centre of Elgin, it happens at any time of year. You can almost pick out the whiskey visitors who are coming. But the bars are full, the shops are full. It's not just about the whiskey industry. It's all the other ancillary businesses round about, the restaurants, the hotels, everything else. It's an incredibly important part of what makes the area, what makes it so important for the area. We had our first ever whiskey dinner in the restaurant in Huntly. Martine Nui came and hosted a dinner which sold out within 2 hours of going on the booking list. So it was good. It was really, really good to see people back in the area. The same thing that they're probably feeling in Islay just now.
Question for you from Christopher Malloy. Is Duncan Taylor responsible for any of the mystery malts that are sold in the U.S.? And I'm assuming by mystery malts, he's referring to the stuff that's sold, say, at like Costco's Kirkland Blend and others. Do you bottle for folks that have their whiskeys sold in the U.S. under their own private labels?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, I couldn't say hand on heart, but certainly not that I'm aware of from what I see going through our production site.
And Grant points out he had a blast for 8 days at the Spirit of Speyside Festival and took a week off to recover after that.
You're doing the job properly then, Graham, if that was the case.
1 day of recovery for each day of the festival sounds about right to me. So how do you top these two 50-year-old Caperdonic and King Claith releases? What's next?
We will continue with the rarest collection. I'm not going to tell you what's next, but I know that we will continue with it, and there's stock in place to keep us going.
Sounds interesting. Dave Kim wants to know, is there a flagship Duncan Taylor label, or is that not really a thing with you guys?
As far as the blends are concerned, it's certainly Black Bull is our key blend. When we come to the single malts, we really set the standard as far as octaves were concerned. We have our octave range and our premium octave, where for the last anywhere between just up to a year, we'll transfer the whiskey into sherry octaves of around about 90 litres in size. And what we do, you're almost start taking it in that small cask and add another layer of complexity and depth to it. And the octaves are a certain age statement. Premium octaves are going to be a bit older. I've seen premium octaves up to 30 years old. We're not trying to recreate the wheel. We're just trying to create everything, keep everything we have and just offer a little bit extra. But as we look around the world now, we're starting to see, Big Smoke has appeared in America again. It's going to start rolling out around the world. Politicians doing really well in India. Octaves and premium octaves are doing fantastically well in Northern Europe. The rarest, hopefully, we're going to see around the world. So it's exciting times. It's one of the things that really brought me to Duncan Taylor was when Ewan explained to me the future plans, and it's the time for the independent bottler just now. A lot of the big companies are maintaining and building on their ranges and doing well with it, but we have this flexibility and this adaptability that they don't have. We can take things out of the ordinary. We can bottle it 7 years old, 4 years old with Dolmunner, 13 years old if we want. We have this capacity to be able to bottle when we believe it's ready, not to fit a certain profile.
And Greg wants to know, will the Dimensions range continue, or is that a thing of the past because he loves that range?
The principle of Dimensions will certainly continue, Greg. It's going to be become the Duncan Taylor single cask range, but the principle behind Dimensions remains.
And Tyrone wants to know, is Duncan Taylor doing anything special for the Queen's Jubilee?
No, at the moment. Not that I'm aware of. It's sometimes with these things you get lost in the noise. Sometimes everybody's doing it, and there's nothing planned.
I think we've pretty much exhausted everything as the dog decides to make an appearance. Hello,
yeah,
Vader.
And wants attention.
Yes, please get down. So, yeah, that's going to happen. Ian Logan from Duncan Taylor Company, thank you for joining us tonight. It's been great to talk to you again. I saw you a few weeks ago at the Nth in Las Vegas, but it's good to catch up again. I've been wanting to get you on here since you joined Duncan Taylor, so it was good to get you here. Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure, Mark. Thank you very much for the invite. Let's talk again soon, hopefully.
Let's talk again over a dram next time.
Thank you, everyone, for your questions as well.
Okay. Thanks again to Ian Logan for joining us from Duncan Taylor Company. Now, I had the chance a couple of days ago to sit down for a Zoom conversation with the country singer Brad Paisley, and that'll be the focus of our WhiskyCast show this weekend. Brad is out with the second edition of his American Highway Reserve bourbon that he has put together in partnership with Bardstown Bourbon Company, and thought we'd give you just a quick preview of what's coming up on the show this weekend. So don't go away just yet. Stand by and watch this for a second. What do you still want to learn about whiskey?
I'd love to know more as to why. I mean, knowing why is the first step to replicating something. But I think that no matter how much we know, they can study this all they want. They could look at it at its molecular structure and figure out what does the vibration of a highway do to a bourbon, and what does I'm wearing a Jefferson's Oceans cap right here. Trey is a good friend of mine, and that's another example that goes out on that boat. And who's to say? I mean, it started out on a great white research vessel that's tagging great white sharks, and what does that do? But I think in the end, what's really fun about bourbon is there's always going to be magic we can't explain, and that's the same with music, because you can tell me all you want that here's why the vibrations in these pitches sound good to the ear. But meanwhile, the same person armed with the same knowledge would not write a good song. You know what I'm saying? There's a magic involved.
A computer can't write a song.
Not yet.
You can record one on a computer, but you can't get the computer to create it itself.
Not something that makes sense. Have you seen some of the stories they try to have a computer write? It always goes off the rails around the time. It's like the man who was the bat goes and fights the crime, and then there'll be like a word that's like, like watermelon shows up or something. And it's like, what is that in there for? They still can't quite do what we do.
That's my conversation, or part of it, with Brad Paisley from the other day. You'll hear the entire conversation on WhiskyCast this weekend. That's our Happy Hour Live webcast from the other night, May 29th, 2022, with Greg Swartz and Ian Logan. Once again, join us this Friday at 5 p.m. New York time when my guest will be Freddie No of Jim Beam. You can watch live on the WhiskyCast YouTube channel, our Facebook page, Twitter, and Twitch. Thanks to Doers and Redbreast, our presenting sponsors. along with Scarabus, the Dalmore, Catoctin Creek, Sagamore Spirit, Mortlock, and Writer's Tears are segment sponsors each week on WhiskyCast. If you have comments or suggestions, I'd love to hear from you. Get in touch with us on social media. Look for WhiskyCast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. The email address is comments@whiskycast.com. WhiskyCast is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2022, and comes to you from the charming, yet regrettably dry town of Haddonfield, New Jersey. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.